Before Brexit, the United Kingdom was one of the most influential nations in the European Union. At the time, the UK held the position of the world's fifth largest economy, boasting a GDP of approximately $2.9 trillion in 2019. Much like a century before, the legendary City of London continued to serve as one of the three pillars of global finance, alongside New York and Hong Kong. The early years of the 21st century were arguably a golden era for the UK, barring the 2008 financial crisis. The nation enjoyed stable growth, averaging over 2% annually. The Queen was alive and well, and the country maintained economic competitiveness with Germany within the continent, while proudly surpassing its historical rival, France. However, as the COVID-19 pandemic approached, the UK began making increasingly baffling decisions, none more controversial than Brexit. From a historical perspective, Brexit may seem to be a natural reflection of the British character. Some might even argue that it was bound to happen sooner or later. Culturally and historically, the UK has always been somewhat disconnected from mainland Europe. To Europeans, the British are often seen in one of two ways, either as wealthy, aloof, and hard-to-please elites, or as uncouth, red-faced, whiskey-soaked tourists sprawled across southern Europe's beautiful beaches. Similarly, the British themselves have long harbored skepticism toward their continental neighbors. Historically, the UK has operated with a fiercely independent mindset when it comes to European affairs. They disrupted Spain's gold shipments from South America with hired pirates, undermined French control of Canada to seize it for themselves, and wrested control of South Africa's Cape of Good Hope from the Dutch through every means possible. The British have historically only taken an active interest in continental Europe when their own interests were directly at stake. This is evident in episodes such as the United Kingdom allying with other European powers to subdue Napoleon, joining forces with France to push Russia out of Crimea in 1855, and later, the strategic calculations of both world wars. Even after World War II, the British were notably lukewarm toward the idea of a unified Europe. For them, only immediate and tangible benefits, such as the American Marshall Plan presented in 1948, garnered attention. The British largely ignored the 1951 Treaty of Paris, which laid the groundwork for the European Union and was signed by 6 nations: France, Germany, Italy, the Netherlands, Belgium, and Luxembourg. It wasn't until 1973 that the UK joined the European Economic Community, EEC, primarily for economic benefits. Ironically, just 2 years later, in 1975, the UK held its first referendum on leaving the EEC, demonstrating that skepticism toward European integration is nothing new. This historical context makes the 2016 Brexit decision far less surprising than it might initially appear. In 2016, the UK government cited 2 major issues as the rationale for leaving the EU: austerity policies and immigration. Post-2008 financial crisis, the austerity measures championed by Angela Merkel's Germany, calling for reduced public spending, welfare cuts, slowed infrastructure development, and increased taxes, irked wealthier nations like the UK and France. From the British perspective, it was frustrating to bear the burden of economic sacrifices despite being among the leading economies of the bloc. The narrative of the United Kingdom's departure from the European Union is layered with irony and history. Frustrated with austerity measures seemingly aimed at rescuing lazy economies like Greece, Spain, and Portugal, the British opted for what they knew best, charting their own course. As in their storied past, they bid adieu with characteristic flair, declaring, "It's been wonderful, but it's time for us to set sail once again." On June 24, 2016, coincidentally also Lionel Messi's birthday, 52% of the British electorate voted in favor of Brexit. This marked the UK's decision to leave the EU after nearly half a century of membership.
No more financial contributions, no more European Court of Justice, no more common fisheries policy, no more being talked down to, no more being bullied, no more Guy Verhofstadt. I mean, what's not to like? I know you're going to miss us. I know you want to ban our national flags, but we're going to wave you goodbye. And we'll look forward in the future to working with you as sovereign
What followed was a drawn-out process of negotiations, culminating in an exit that was as much a slap in the face for the European Union as it was a declaration of British independence. One particularly infamous episode during this period involved British delegates dismissing Belgium as not a country but an artificial construct, prompting sharp criticism and highlighting the UK's often dismissive attitude toward the continent. This episode perfectly encapsulates the British perspective on Europe: pragmatic, skeptical, and irreverent. But now that the UK has joyously sailed away, one must ask, what is the state of Britain today? Did the promises of sovereignty, economic freedom, and prosperity come to fruition, or was Brexit a gamble with unforeseen consequences? It seems that the post-Brexit reality has not lived up to the lofty expectations. By 2023, the United Kingdom remains the only G7 country yet to recover its pre-pandemic GDP levels. Meanwhile, EU nations have leveraged intra-bloc trade and coordinated recovery programs to rebound and grow. The UK's real GDP per capita has barely increased since the pandemic and is only 4% higher than mid-2016 levels. By comparison, the Eurozone boasts an 8% growth in the same period. For British citizens, these numbers might sting, especially considering the cost of living. The pound sterling often makes goods significantly pricier in the UK than in other countries. Take, for example, a new iPhone, priced at $1,000 in the US, it costs £1,100 in the UK. Across the rest of Europe, it's just €1,000. The labor shortage post-Brexit has further exacerbated inflation. Consumer prices in the UK have risen by 31% since 2016, compared to 27% in the US and 24% in the Eurozone. With these challenges, one has to wonder, was the sovereignty gained through Brexit worth the economic struggles? Let us know your thoughts in the comments. And stay tuned as we unravel more of the UK's post-Brexit journey. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and join the discussion. No wonder the British public feels increasingly burdened by high consumer costs. For small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, the combination of labor shortages and rising costs has created a precarious business environment. Once thriving companies engaged in European trade now face the grim choices of adapting to stricter regulations, relocating, or shutting down entirely. Perhaps the most alarming indicator of the UK's current struggles is its dismal investment performance. Among G7 nations, the UK ranks dead last in both domestic private investment and overall development investment. Astonishingly, it lags behind Italy, a country that not so long ago was considered on the brink of economic collapse. This stagnation in investment reflects deeper structural issues, particularly in trade. Non-tariff barriers, including complex customs regulations and stringent rules of origin mandated by the Trade and Cooperation Agreement (TCA), have driven up costs and slowed down operations for businesses trading with the EU. These obstacles diminish the UK's competitiveness on the global stage. By leaving the EU single market, the UK has erected new trade barriers that increase import-export costs and hamper international competitiveness. The investment drought and sluggish trade highlight a stark reality. The once mighty king of investment has found itself struggling to reclaim its former glory. What are your thoughts on this troubling trend? Share your insights in the comments below, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more in-depth analysis. Stay tuned for our next episode as we explore solutions to these economic challenges. Small and medium-sized enterprises, SMEs, have borne the brunt of the Brexit aftermath, with UK exports to the EU plummeting by 30% and over 20,000 small businesses ceasing their export operations entirely. But if the economic difficulties weren't daunting enough, the issue of immigration reveals a twist of irony. Immigration was once a key justification for the UK's departure from the EU. During its membership, the EU Council mandated member states to share specific quotas of immigrants, a policy that many in the UK criticized as burdensome and intrusive. Fast forward to today, labor shortages have reached critical levels, compelling the UK to actively welcome immigrants to address workforce gaps. This dramatic shift culminated in the Labour Party's resounding victory in the 2024 elections, driven significantly by their pro-immigration platform, a stark contrast to the anti-immigration sentiment that once dominated public discourse. Reflecting on these developments, one might see them as a cautionary tale. Yet, understanding the complexities of Brexit from the perspective of the British people and their leaders makes it challenging to pass clear-cut judgment on the decisions made. The story of Brexit continues to evolve, offering lessons in governance, policy, and the unintended consequences of bold decisions. However, I came across a 2023 survey conducted by a polling company called Yocop in the UK. The results revealed that 55% of respondents said they would vote to remain if they could go back to 2016. Meanwhile, 35% indicated that they would abstain. Whether this is right or wrong, I will refrain from commenting. That said, this response shouldn't come as a surprise. The British people have long been known for their independent and freedom-loving nature, often resistant to close cooperation with continental Europe. To put it bluntly, they tend to prioritize their own interests. What about you? What are your thoughts on the UK's post-Brexit journey over the past half-decade? Let us know your perspectives. Until next time, goodbye and take care.